Am I the asshole for not adjusting our China trip to my brother-in-law's cardio limits? I never thought a family trip to China would spark so much drama. My sister and I, both born in China but raised in the States, planned an epic adventure with our families to reconnect with our roots. I'm 39, married with 2 kids, 11 and 9, living in the Pacific Northwest. My sister, 36, her husband, Doug, 40, and their 12-year-old son live in Dallas. Doug's the quintessential American guy, raised on processed foods, drives his Grand Wagoneer everywhere, and isn't exactly built for endurance. My sister and I, raised on our parents' healthy eating and active lifestyle, passed that on to our kids. But Doug? Let's just say long walks aren't his thing. The trip was inspired by my nephew's love for his 7th grade ancient China unit, especially the terracotta warriors. I was already planning to visit family in Chongqing, so we expanded the itinerary to include Beijing, Xi'an, and Nanjing, perfect for the kids to explore their heritage. I handled most of the planning, knowing Chinese cities involve serious walking due to their sprawling transit systems and car-unfriendly layouts. I dropped hints to Doug about the physical demands, but he brushed them off, acting like it'd be a breeze. When we arrived, reality hit hard. Doug couldn't keep up. In Beijing, he was panting after a short trek through the Forbidden City. My sister often stayed back with him, missing out while my wife and I led the kids through our tour groups. The kids were thrilled, soaking in the history, but Doug's struggle was obvious. I felt bad, but this was a once-in-a-lifetime trip for my nephew, who's half Chinese, and my kids, visiting Xi'an and Beijing for the first time. The real clash came in my grandmother's hometown near Chongqing. This place is a maze of steep slopes and endless stairs, beautiful but brutal. On a hot, humid day, I planned to take the kids to the local market via a park tied to our family history. Doug insisted on joining, saying he didn't want to sit around. I warned him it was a long walk, but he waved it off. Half a mile in, he was red-faced, sweating buckets, and lagging behind. The kids were racing ahead, excited about the park's statues and stories I'd shared about our ancestors. I slowed down for Doug, but it wasn't enough. At the park's edge, I suggested he take a taxi back. He agreed reluctantly, and I continued to the market with the kids. Back at the house, Doug was sulking, and my sister was pissed. She said I was inconsiderate for not taking a taxi to the market, which would have been easier for Doug. I explained that a taxi would have taken longer due to the town's layout, and the kids would have missed the park, a key part of our family's story. She admitted she hadn't realized how intense the trip would be since I handled the planning, but felt I should have considered Doug's limits. I get it, maybe I could have been more accommodating, but this trip was about the kids experiencing their culture, not slowing down for an adult who didn't prepare. The kids had a blast, raving about the warriors, the Great Wall, and the market's chaotic energy. My nephew said it made history real for him. Still, I wonder if I was too harsh. Doug's not unfit to the point of immobility, but I knew he wasn't ready for this. Should I have rearranged the itinerary to suit him, even if it meant cutting corners on the kids' experience? It's tough balancing everyone's needs on a trip this big. Am I the asshole for not adjusting the trip to Doug's cardio limits? Am I the asshole for refusing to take my daughter to her birthday party? Raising a kid who knows what she wants is a blessing and a challenge. My daughter, Cleo, is 5 and has hated pink since she was 3. She's got one pink shirt and a single pink stuffed animal she tolerates, but that's it. Pink dresses, toys, or decorations? Hard pass. She'll scrunch her nose and push them away. It's not just a phase, it's her. I respect that, especially since I'm not a pink fan either. But my father's partner, Prue, can't seem to accept it. Prue's been pushing pink on Cleo for years. Every gift, dolls, clothes, even a sparkly pink backpack, is some shade of bubblegum or magenta. I've told Prue repeatedly that Cleo doesn't like it, but she insists I should encourage Cleo to try different shades, saying it's feminine or cheerful. It's like she's trying to rewrite my kid's personality. Cleo gets visibly upset, clutching her favorite blue dinosaur instead of the latest pink offering. I've tried being polite, but Prue's relentless. Last week, my father invited me, my husband, and our kids, Cleo and her 9-year-old brother, for dinner at his place. He mentioned a surprise for the kids, which sounded sweet. My father missed Cleo's actual birthday in November due to work, so I figured maybe it was a belated gift. My son's birthday is in March, so I didn't think it was about him. But then my younger sister, who still lives with Dad, texted me a heads up. The surprise was a birthday party for Cleo, 4 months late. Weird, but okay. Then she sent photos and my stomach dropped. The entire setup screamed Prue. Pink balloons, pink tablecloths, pink plates, pink banners, even a pink frosted cake. Pink foil fringe curtains were glued to the doorways. It was like a Pepto-Bismol explosion. This wasn't for Cleo. It was for Prue's idea of Cleo. My sister warned me Prue had been planning it for weeks, ignoring everyone's input. I showed the photos to my husband, and we both knew Cleo would hate it. She'd feel uncomfortable, maybe even cry, surrounded by a color she despises. Plus, a surprise party months after her birthday felt more like a performance than a celebration. We decided not to go. I texted my father, "Hey, sister told me everything. We're not coming. We're taking the kids to McDonald's and telling them that was your surprise. You and Prue can come if you want, we're paying." We took the kids to McDonald's, where Cleo happily munched fries and played with her brother. My father showed up alone, but he was distant, barely talking, and left after 20 minutes. No Prue. Later, both he and Prue blew up at me. Dad said we'd dismissed Prue's heartfelt gesture and embarrassed him. Prue called me, saying I'm raising Cleo to be restrictive and ungrateful, blaming my own dislike of pink for Cleo's preferences. She called Cleo a spoiled brat who needs to learn to compromise. That stung. I get that Prue might have meant well, but this felt like another attempt to force her vision on my daughter. My sister and one brother back me up, though my sister said I could have handled it more tactfully. My other brother's neutral, saying I should have just gone to keep the peace. I'm torn. Maybe I was harsh, bailing without explaining to Prue directly. But showing up felt like betraying Cleo, letting someone steamroll her boundaries for the sake of gratitude. I want her to feel heard, especially at 5, when she's just starting to understand her own voice. Was I wrong to skip the party and take the kids somewhere Cleo would actually enjoy? Am I the asshole for refusing to take my daughter to her birthday party? Am I the asshole for asking my mother-in-law not to leave us 5 timeshares in her will? Family dynamics can get messy, especially when it comes to inheritances. My husband and I, both in our early 40s, have been married for 15 years, building a stable life with 2 kids, 10 and 7. My mother-in-law, Diane, is a lively 68-year-old with a knack for grand gestures. She's always been generous, but her latest plan has us reeling. Diane recently announced she's leaving us 5 timeshares in her will, properties she's owned for decades across Florida, Nevada, and Colorado. Sounds nice, right? Except these come with a hefty $9,500 annual maintenance fee and a perpetuity clause that makes them nearly impossible to offload. Diane brought it up during a family dinner, beaming with pride like she was handing us a golden ticket. She's always loved her timeshares, spending weeks every year at these resorts, sipping margaritas by the pool. For her, they're a status symbol, a slice of luxury she worked hard for. But my husband and I aren't vacation home people. We prefer road trips or renting a cabin for a week, flexible, low-commitment stuff. The idea of being locked into 5 properties, each with its own fees, feels like a financial anchor. We consulted an attorney who confirmed our fears. Getting rid of timeshares, especially with a perpetuity clause, is a legal and financial nightmare. Selling them could take years, and we'd likely lose money in the process. After some late-night talks, my husband and I decided to address it directly. We invited Diane over for coffee, sat her down, and explained our concerns as gently as we could. We thanked her for her generosity, but said we weren't interested in owning timeshares or paying $9,500 a year in fees. We asked if she'd consider removing them from her will or transferring them to someone else now, maybe another relative who'd enjoy them. We thought we were being reasonable, keeping the tone respectful and calm. Diane didn't take it well. She went from shocked to furious in seconds, her face turning red as she called us ungrateful. She said the timeshares were her legacy, a gift meant to bring our family closer through shared vacations. She accused us of rejecting her values and implied we were greedy for not appreciating her thoughtful gesture. When we suggested transferring them before her passing to avoid the will's complications, she doubled down, saying she'd never change it. She stormed out, and we haven't spoken since. My husband's tried calling, but she's giving him the cold shoulder. To make matters worse, Diane's not leaving us any cash to cover the fees. She's got significant debt, so her estate won't have liquid assets to offset the costs. The timeshares are the bulk of her gift, and we'd be stuck footing the bill indefinitely. My husband's siblings, who aren't getting the timeshares, think we're overreacting. They say we should just accept them and figure it out later, maybe rent them out. But we've researched it. Renting's unreliable and the fees don't vanish. We'd be pouring money into something we don't want or use. I'm torn. On one hand, I get why Diane's hurt. To her, these timeshares are a symbol of her life's achievements, and our rejection probably feels personal. Maybe we could have softened our approach or offered to help find another recipient. On the other hand, it feels unfair for her to saddle us with a financial burden we explicitly said we don't want. We're not rich. $9,500 a year is a huge hit. Enough for a family vacation on our terms. Should we have just smiled and nodded to keep the peace, knowing we'd be stuck with the fallout later? Am I the asshole for asking my mother-in-law not to leave us 5 timeshares in her will? Am I the asshole for telling everyone I was serving a chicken pot pie when it wasn't a plain and basic one? Cooking for a crowd is my happy place. I'm 35, a home cook who loves experimenting with whatever's in the fridge. Last weekend, I had a few folks over, my sister, her husband Frank, and a couple of friends, for a casual dinner at my place. With a group to feed, I went for a chicken pot pie, something I've made a million times. To me, a pot pie is a cozy, anything-goes dish. A flaky crust stuffed with whatever you've got, held together by a rich gravy. It's comfort food, not a rigid recipe. This time, I had some fresh roasted hatch chilies from a farmer's market, a few ears of corn, leftover chicken, onions, and a bunch of kale. So I tossed those in with a creamy gravy, seasoned it up, and baked it in my go-to savory crust, which has a little cheddar and black pepper for extra flavor. I was excited. It smelled incredible, spicy, and hearty, perfect for a fall evening. When I invited everyone, I just said, "I'm making a chicken pot pie," figuring that covered it. No one mentioned allergies or food issues, so I assumed we were good. When I served it, the table was all smiles, except for Frank, my brother-in-law. The second he cut into his slice, he froze, staring at the green flecks of kale and the golden corn like they'd personally offended him. "What the fuck is this?" he said, loud enough to make everyone pause. "How is this a pot pie?" I was caught off guard but kept it light, explaining it was my take on a pot pie. Chicken, veggies, gravy, crust. Just with hatch chilies and kale instead of the usual peas and carrots. He wasn't having it. He insisted a chicken pot pie should only have chicken, gravy, peas, carrots, and maybe potatoes, like some sacred law. He said anything else wasn't a pot pie. I tried to laugh it off, saying I don't see food as black and white and I just used what I had. My family's always cooked that way. Recipes are more like suggestions, shaped by what's fresh or leftover. I apologized if it wasn't what he expected, but pointed out no one had mentioned dietary restrictions. Frank just scowled, pushing the food around his plate like a grumpy kid. The vibe got awkward. My sister tried to change the subject, but Frank kept muttering about false advertising. He ended up leaving early, barely touching his food, which stung since I'd spent hours on it. Afterward, my sister texted me, saying Frank felt misled because I called it a chicken pot pie when it wasn't traditional. She didn't think I was wrong, but suggested I could have described it better to avoid the meltdown. My friends, though, loved it. One even asked for the recipe. I'm starting to wonder if I messed up by not being specific. I mean, I didn't think pot pie was a loaded term. Growing up, my mom would throw shrimp, zucchini, even curry spices into hers, and we still called it pot pie. I figured most people saw it as a flexible dish, not some rigid standard you'd find in a freezer aisle. But Frank's reaction has me second-guessing. Maybe I should have said spicy chicken pot pie with chilies and kale, or checked if anyone wanted the classic version. I hate that it ruined the night for him, but I also feel like he overreacted, turning a meal into a manifesto. Cooking's about creativity, not rules. Right? Or did I mess up by not meeting his expectations? Am I the asshole for telling everyone I was serving a chicken pot pie when it wasn't a plain and basic one? Am I the asshole for telling my son and daughter-in-law it's too late to join the family vacation? Family vacations are supposed to bring everyone together, but sometimes they just stir up drama. I'm 62, a mom of 3 grown kids, and every year I try to organize a big family trip to keep our bond tight. This year I started planning early, reaching out around Easter to check everyone's availability. With grandkids, spouses, and busy schedules, it's like herding cats, but I love it. After some back and forth, we settled on a winter trip that worked for almost everyone, except my son, 34, and his wife, my daughter-in-law, 32. They said those dates didn't work for her job, and the backup dates I offered were a no-go too. I was disappointed but moved on, assuming they were out. Usually, our vacations are drivable. Think cabins or beach houses. But this time, the adults agreed the kids, ranging from 6 to 12, were old enough for something bigger. We decided on Europe, a first for our family. Everyone was thrilled, picking cities like Paris and Rome. I handled the lodging, booking a big house to fit us all, and everyone else bought their plane tickets. It wasn't cheap, but I covered the accommodations to make it easier for my kids. My son and daughter-in-law weren't in the group chat since they'd opted out, so we finalized everything without them. A few weeks ago, as we were locking in details, my daughter-in-law called me out of the blue. She'd heard about the Europe plans, probably from my daughter, and suddenly wanted in. She asked what they needed to do to join, sounding excited. I was confused, so I asked how she'd gotten time off work when she'd said it was impossible. She brushed it off, saying she just could. Honestly, I got the vibe she hadn't wanted to commit until she learned it was Europe, not another local trip. That rubbed me the wrong way. I told her it was too late. The house was booked, tickets were bought, and adding 2 more adults would mean upgrading to a bigger place, which would cost me thousands more. I'd already stretched my budget to cover everyone else. She pressed, asking if I was serious, saying it was cruel to exclude them from a family trip around Christmas. I held firm, saying it wasn't my fault they'd said no initially, and I wasn't willing to pay extra now. My son got involved, calling me a jerk. He pointed out I could afford to add them, which is true, I have savings, but that's not the point. I felt they were trying to jump in last minute after dismissing the trip earlier. Now they're both pissed, and it's causing a rift. My other kids think I should have found a way to include them, like paying for the upgrade and letting them handle flights. But I'm frustrated. They had their chance and said no. I spent months coordinating this, and now I'm the bad guy for sticking to the plan. I want my family together, but I also think it's unfair to expect me to rearrange everything at the 11th hour. The grandkids are so excited for Europe, and I don't want to disrupt their experience with last-minute stress. Still, I wonder if I'm being too stubborn. Maybe I could have checked for cheaper options or asked the others to chip in for an upgrade. My son's hurt, saying I'm prioritizing money over family, and that stings. But I also feel like they made their choice months ago. Should I have bent over backward to include them, even after they opted out? Am I the asshole for telling my son and daughter-in-law it's too late to join the family vacation? Am I the asshole for declining leftover food at my boyfriend's friend's BBQ after the group ate first in front of us? Social gatherings can get awkward fast, especially when you're the new face in the crowd. I'm 37, and last summer I went to a BBQ with my then-boyfriend, Tom, 38, to meet his friends for the first time. It was a pre-drink event before a street festival, and I was excited to make a good impression. Before we headed over, Tom mentioned a message from the host, Jake, who felt bad because they might not have enough food for everyone. Jake said we shouldn't feel weird about grabbing whatever was lying around. I figured they'd already eaten, and we were joining for drinks and maybe some snacks. No big deal, right? Tom and I planned to eat at the festival later anyway. When we arrived at Jake's place, the vibe was friendly enough. There were 12 guests total, a mix of Tom's old college buddies and their partners. The backyard was set up with a long table, string lights, and a grill pumping out burger and hot dog smells that made my stomach rumble. But it quickly got weird. It turned out they hadn't eaten yet. 8 of the guests, clearly the inner circle, were invited to sit at the nicely set table, while the 4 of us, including me and Tom, were left standing. No one said anything, but it felt like we were spectators at their private dinner party. When it was time to eat, the 8 sat down and dug in, piling their plates with burgers, dogs, coleslaw, and potato salad. They laughed, clinked beers, and barely made eye contact with us. We 4 extras stood off to the side, chatting awkwardly among ourselves. I kept waiting for someone to offer us a seat or a plate, but nothing. My stomach growled louder, and I shot Tom a look, but he just shrugged like it was normal. I was starving, but the setup felt so exclusionary, like we were uninvited guests crashing their meal. After they finished, Jake stood up, all smiles, and said, "Guys, please help yourself," to the leftovers. There were some picked-over buns, a few cold hot dogs, and a bit of salad left. Tom grabbed a plate and started loading up, urging me to come eat. I froze. Something about scavenging their scraps while they'd eaten like kings in front of us felt degrading. I didn't know these people, and the whole scene was so uncomfortable. I smiled and said, "No, thank you," keeping it polite, and went back to chatting with another guest. I figured I'd grab something at the festival, like we'd planned. Tom, though, was livid. He said my refusal was rude and embarrassed him in front of his friends. The rest of the night was tense. He barely spoke to me at the festival, where I got a taco to tide me over. Later, he broke up with me, saying I'd acted superior by not eating and made him look bad. I was floored. I thought he'd put me in a weird spot by not warning me about the setup, then got mad when I handled it my way. In Canada, where I live, eating in front of guests without offering them food feels unthinkable. Maybe it's cultural, but to me, it was bizarre and unwelcoming. Now I'm second-guessing myself. Was I rude for declining the leftovers? I wasn't trying to judge Jake or his friends. I just felt out of place and didn't want to play along with their odd hospitality. But maybe I came off as ungrateful or snobby. Tom's reaction makes me wonder if I missed some social cue. Or was he gaslighting me, flipping the script to make me feel like the bad guy? Am I the asshole for declining leftover food at my boyfriend's friend's BBQ?